Hi, my name is Alexiei Dingli, and I am a professor of artificial intelligence at the University of Malta. Today I'll be talking about museums and the web, a femme-fatale relationship. During my talk, I will explore different patterns which were used on the web. These patterns were extremely important because they made the web of today successful, and in fact we refer to it as Web 2.0. Then I will have a look at how to apply them to museums and see whether they can also make the online experience of museums successful and ready for the world of today. What is the dotcom bubble? The dotcom bubble is essentially a stock market bubble which happened around the year 2000. What happened was that a lot of people were investing into these dot-com companies, the web companies that were providing web applications. Most of them, unfortunately, were not real and did not really produce any value. In fact, it was all based upon speculation. The speculation continued growing until all of a sudden this bubble burst and there was a huge crash in the stock markets. Essentially, the stocks rose up to 400% and down to 78%. As you can see from the graph as well, after the dot-com bubble, the economy took more than 15 years to recover and go back to the state which it was back in the year 2000. After the burst of the dot-com bubble, something incredible happened. People sat down and looked at the successful web companies and try to identify patterns which help them get through the dot-com bubble. That is what makes these web applications Web 2.0 applications. Those that will survive the new web, the way in which people will contribute and interact with the web. In fact, out of this, a conference was organized whereby 8 patterns were successfully identified. Now, since museums are opening their doors towards the web, and considering that they are not being very successful, the question is, can we apply these patterns to museums as well? It's interesting to note that a basic element of Web 2.0 applications is the element of you. The most important thing in these applications is the person, the individual, who is contributing successfully to the success of these companies. And this is essentially the big trend which we will see in the coming years, whereby people are looking for more personalization, but also more contribution towards the content of different museums and other entities. So the question I will be asking today is the following. Can we apply Web 2.0 patterns to museum? Can we find ways in which museums can actually use them for their own benefits? Are they being used already? And in the following talk, I will go through some examples of successful implementation of these patterns which is happening already today. The first pattern I'll be talking about is the long tail. Let's imagine for a second that the internet is a fish. There are the big companies at the top, at the head of the fish, and the other smaller websites and companies towards the bottom, the tail of the fish. Now traditionally, before the dot-com bubble, big companies used to focus on the head of the fish only, whilst ignoring the bigger part of the internet. Of course, this was done because it was very difficult to reach up to those companies. A possible solution for that was to use algorithmics. So the use of algorithms in order to identify those companies and come up with an automated method of reaching them. And in fact, the long tail methodology states that you shouldn't focus only on the head of the fish, but also on the remaining body as well. Like that, you would be covering most of the fish. So how can we apply the long tail to the museum experience? First of all, let's dissect the audience of the museums for a second. So at the forefront, so at the head of the fish, you find the people who visit and appreciate your museum. After those, you find the people who simply visit your museum, maybe out of curiosity or for other reasons. And then you have the third group, who are the people who don't visit your museum. Further back, you also find the people who don't know that your museum even exists. Now, with the idea of the long tail, what we have to do is we have to keep on helping and working for the people who actually visit and appreciate your museum. But we have to find ways of reaching the other people. The people, of course, in your community, but also the people that exist in the rest of the world. Remember, the internet is there to give you a bigger reach, and through it you can reach anyone, anywhere in the world. So your audience now is no longer your local community, but you have to reach towards the wider community, the global community. So let's look at two concrete examples on how to reach the long tail. The first one is Tim Miller, the head of security at the National Cowboy and Western Heritage Museum in Oklahoma City. Tim was a normal security guard, but when the museum closed because of COVID-19, the owners of the museum asked him to start tweeting information about the museum. This was not really the job of Tim, but he decided to give it a go, and his hilarious tweets became an international sensation. In fact, as of today, the Twitter account of the Cowboy Museum has more than 300,000 followers. The second example is of Professor Tim Pierce from the Carnegie Museum of Natural History. He is the head of the mollusk section at the museum. About a year ago, the museum asked him to record a series of jokes and fun facts about snails, which they intended to share online. In fact, they did share them on TikTok, and all of a sudden, Tim became an internet sensation. Let's have a look at one of his jokes, keeping in mind that this joke has garnered more than 1.7 million views as of today.
Barack Obama went to a costume party. He was giving his wife a piggyback ride. And the host of the party said, "Welcome, Mr. President. What are you dressed up as?" And Barack Obama said, "I'm a snail. That's Michelle on my back."
The second important pattern is that users add value. Think about social networking sites such as Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. What would they be without their users? Can you imagine Facebook without nobody posting anything? Or liking or linking stuff? So before Web 2.0, people were consumers. They used to consume the information which was online. After Web 2.0, people became contributors and they started creating their own content. Now think for a second. Can we take this pattern and use it in our museums? What would happen?
This collection represents 35 years of my life. Oh, careful. Our journey begins with this mug.
Don't touch me! Don't touch me! Don't touch me! Don't touch me!
Of course, we are not suggesting that, but think about all those artists that are available online, located anywhere around the world, and they can easily create digital media, maybe a painting in flat or 3D, maybe a writing, a video, practically all sorts of media which they can send via their email. Have a look at the following demo. Essentially what we'll be looking at is the tilt brush, which is this brush which allows artists to create visuals in 3 dimensions. But you don't need to be an artist to contribute to a museum. Just have a look at the Yad Vashem Holocaust Memorial. What they did was to recreate the Holocaust Remembrance Day in a digital form. In so doing, you can visit it any day of the week. Another similar project is the Europeana, whereby they collect artifacts and digital stuff from different museums around the world. They will create these different collections and propose them as this huge European museum. So why not replicate this model? Ask people to contribute. Of course, they will send you all sorts of stuff. Some will be relevant, but there will be lots of stuff which will be relevant as well. The people will not only contribute by enriching your collection, but the people will feel that they are a part of your museum. And this will create this unbreakable link with them, thus making them care about your museum, visit it, and disseminate information about it to their friends and colleagues. The third important pattern is data insight. Applications are increasingly data-driven, and in fact, you are already collecting a lot of data about the people that visit your museum, when they visit it, what they do in your museum. So collect the data, analyze it, and come up with a plan of how to use it and enhance the user experience further. In the digital world, this collection of data is even simpler. You don't even need to guess who your guests are, but you can analyze the data. When do the people come? From where do they come? How long do they stay? What do they want to see when they come to your site? So make use of online analytics, statistics, maybe surveys. Look at what the competitors are doing. Elicit information from your visitors, and come up with practical solutions of what would suit best the audiences you're trying to target. When you are online, you don't even need to guess which artifact got the most views, because there are counters which gives you this information. So which is the most popular exhibit? Why do people come to your site? Which is the artifact and why is it generating so much interest? Is it maybe because it's well presented, or maybe for some other reason? You could also zoom into it and ask individual people why they are preferring that artifact instead of another artifact, and learn from them. Learn to identify what people are looking for when they come to your museum. This is all extremely easy, because of course on the web museum everything is recorded, and web analytics will give you all the information which you require. Another important shift when going online is the element of 24/7. A museum will be open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So the most important thing then is to try to identify when your museum is getting the most traffic. What time? Is it weekdays, maybe weekends, mornings, afternoon, evenings? When did most people come? When did few people come? And ask yourself, why are there few people coming? Sometimes the analysis can be a little bit surprising. Just to give you an example, the Art Institute of Chicago started analyzing its visitors. At first glance, nothing jumped out, but looking at the data in different ways, a particular pattern emerged. It seems that member attendance is relatively flat outside of major exhibitions. However, US tourist volumes from fly markets, that is those markets which are about 8 or more hours away from Chicago, follows a seasonal pattern. So if the museum learns that that is a very important audience for that museum, then of course they can modify and adjust the openings of their museum to suit those people, and also target that particular audience. The fourth pattern is the network effect by default. Keep in mind that many people would interact with your website, but only a small percentage of users will go to the trouble of adding value to your application. So what you want to do is to help them to add value to your application, but as a side effect also make use of their network of contacts, their friends, their colleagues, and get them to share your content through their entire network. By doing so, you will hope that one of your posts will go viral, and then of course your museum and your exhibits will gain global popularity. A very good example of this is the Getty Challenge, or the Museum Challenge. This was created by the Getty Museum, and essentially it's performed through the following 3 easy steps. 1. Choose your favorite artwork from the collection. 2. Find 3 things lying around your house. And 3. Recreate the artwork with those items. Once you do that, then you can share it around. This challenge has been extremely successful, and in fact, as of today, there are more than 72,000 results. Another interesting challenge is the one which invites users to identify a particular artwork, the one which they like the most, select a caption for that artwork, and distribute it as a sort of meme. Over here we can see 3 examples of these memes. This was done also by the Morgan Library and Museum, whereby they had a particular collection during the month of August, and they asked people to do the same of their favorite drawing and share it using the hashtag Morgan Library. The 5th pattern is some rights reserved. Intellectual property protection limits reuse and prevents experimentation. Therefore, in these cases, when benefits come from collective adoption and not from private restrictions, it is important to make sure that barriers to adoption are as low as possible. This means that sometimes you have to give a little bit to take back a lot more, and we'll see this in the coming examples. A good example of this is the initiative which the Getty Museum took. Essentially, they created an extension for the popular Switch game Animal Crossing, and they created the Animal Crossing art generator. What happens is that they invited users of the game to actually go into their collection, find an artwork which they particularly like, transform it into an artwork which can be shown on Animal Crossing, and then display it in their own homes within the game. Furthermore, people can have visitors coming over and look at their art collection, and they were also advised to share it also with the Getty Museum. In fact, all they had to do was to post it online and tag it using the hashtag #ACArtGenerator. This proved to be extremely successful, so when the Getty Museum gave out parts of its rights related to the images, then it got back a lot more, because people were sharing those images all over the web and getting other people interested in their collection. Another interesting initiative is the one by the Smithsonian Museum, whereby they came up with the Smithsonian Open Access, where users can download, share and reuse millions of Smithsonian images. At the moment, they can actually make use of almost 3 million 2D and 2D digital items. In fact, what you can see over here is an example of one of these 3D models. You can see the entire skeleton of a mammoth, and this is available online over Sketchfab, which is a big internet library of 3D models. People can actually download this model, modify it as they like, and also 3D print it and have it as a model within their own home. The 6th pattern is the Perpetual Beta. The idea here is that software is no longer something which you download and install on your machine, but it's rather a service which you have access to from your browser. In a similar way, a museum can become something which is constantly evolving, constantly changing. So it's no longer a static building with static artifacts, but a place which is changing dynamically based upon the users, the artifacts, and a lot of other things, where users can actually customize and change what they are seeing and experiencing within the space of the museum. A good example of this is the Albertina Museum in Vienna. What they actually did was to get some of their paintings, they printed them and placed copies of those prints outside. People could then use an app on their mobile device and bring them to life via augmented reality. Augmented reality is the superimposition of virtual objects over real objects. Another interesting take to this is that actually those prints can be sent via email to anyone. The person can either print them or view them within the computer screen, and they will come to life in front of him using his own mobile device. So now the location of the museum is no longer tied to a physical space, but it is variable and depends on where the paintings are actually located. Another interesting example is the Museum of Carlos Montero, which is a virtual museum highlighting all the paintings of the artist. There is also information about the artist, and there are several rooms which the user can explore. Apart from this, something which is interesting in these virtual museums is that the content of the museum can be curated by the user himself. In so doing, the museum will be custom made for that particular user. In this case, the example is in virtual reality, but there are other methodologies which can be used, such as 360 videos, etc. The seventh pattern is cooperate, don't control. Web 2.0 applications are built on a network of cooperating data services. The idea here is that if you manage to get different services together, you can manage to do much more than that. Have a look at the following two videos. In one case, we see two wolves that are collaborating together in order to get some meat. On the other end, we see two dogs that do not manage to collaborate, and because of that, they do not manage to reach their target, the meat. So the basic principle is that if we collaborate together, we can manage to do much more than if we are alone. An interesting example of cooperate and not control is the Google Arts and Culture. Essentially, Google has partnered with over 500 museums and galleries worldwide in an effort to increase access to the arts. The platform allows users to browse featured museum collections or use Google's interior street view in order to wander the gallery halls. Let's have a look at a video which showcases the Google Arts and Culture website.
Inspiration is spread around the globe, across space and time, in the places we love and with the people of our past. art has changed the way we see the world and the way we see each other. We started with simple tools for food and fire, and then carved statues of myths and heroes. And we built monuments to last forever. There is so much to see, learn, and experience. With the Google Arts and Culture app, you can immerse yourself in 360-degree views using Google Cardboard. Or zoom in to reveal the secrets of a masterpiece. Discover inspirational moments, iconic people, and artistic wonders. Search by time or even color. Save your favorites and share them with the world. Explore more with Google Arts and Culture. Download the app and get inspired every day. Where will you start?
But there are other things one can do. In one case, the UK Yorkshire Museum came up with the idea of a curator battle. In fact, this was launched at the beginning of lockdown. The idea was that different curators would launch different battles based upon their particular interests. For example, one of them was the Best Cat Challenge. And in fact, we can see two pictures, one from the University of St. Andrews Museum and the other from St. Albans Museum. Another interesting battle was the Sassiest Object Battle, and over here we can see a sunfish saying "talk to the fin, pal" at the Edinburgh Natural Science Museum. Finally, the third example is of the creepiest object within the museum. In fact, at the top we can see a Victorian handmade model of figures playing cards made from the crab legs and claws, which can be found at the York Castle Museum. At the bottom we can see an example of a mermaid which is currently situated at the Edinburgh Natural Sciences Museum. The eighth and final pattern is software above the level of a single device. The computer is no longer the only access device for internet applications, and applications that are limited to a single device are less valuable than those that are connected. This is in a similar way to museum. A museum which is only offline is of course problematic because people can only visit it when it is open. Whereas an online museum is much more accessible to people, it can offer them different services, some of them even personalized with contextual information, thus making it much more appealing for people to visit that museum. It's interesting to note that these days, web applications can be accessed from practically any device. It could be your laptop device, maybe your tablet, or else your phone. However, this shouldn't make a difference. Today there are websites which are called responsive websites, and essentially they change and shift the content based upon the limitations of that particular device. Now it's very important to have a presence on all of these devices because people tend to use them during different periods of their day. For example, if I am at the office, I might be looking at a museum website through my computer. If I'm commuting, maybe on the bus, I will probably look at the museum website on my iPad. If I am at home and I am in bed going to sleep, I will probably go through the museum website via my mobile device. So it is very important to keep an open access for the different devices which exist. It's interesting to note, for example, that when it comes to e-commerce sales, 1/3 of all e-commerce sales are happening on mobile devices. And the future is definitely, we are seeing an increase in these mobile devices and also an increase in wearable devices. So things which you wear upon yourself. Finally, it is important to remember that this is not about using different devices only, but we have to find the best way to stimulate the various senses in our body. For example, an important sense which we tend to forget is the auditory sense. Let's have a look at the following game called Papa Sangre, which is an auditory game. So there is only sound, there are no visuals. So I invite you now to close your eyes and experience this game together.
Hello. You were in the garden where people go when they die. But I can get you back. Now do as I say, or very soon you'll forget everything and everyone you've ever known. I'll warn you, it's going to be difficult, and it's not going to be nice.
So to conclude, here is a summary of my talk. Essentially, I will going through the 8 patterns briefly. The first one is the long tail, so use social media to reach out to all people. The second one, users add value, so get users to contribute and not just visit. The third, data inside, so use analytics to collect data about who visits your website, when they visit, and what they like to see. The fourth is the network effect, so use the power of the people's network to get your museum known. The fifth is some rights reserved, so don't be afraid to share some of your content with users. The sixth is the perpetual beta, so offer people a museum in transition, which changes every time they visit it. The seventh is cooperate, don't control. Be open to collaborations with other institutions. And the eighth is software is above the device. Reach your users through different devices and different senses. That was it from my end. I would like to thank you. I really hope you enjoyed the talk, and please feel free to ask me any questions or send me an email on the email below. Thank you.